Okay, let's get into this. You know that feeling, right?
Yeah.
You decide, okay, this time it's different. I'm really going to make a change.
Yeah. Whether it's learning a skill, getting healthier, whatever it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then reality hits. You see the mountain you have to climb, and suddenly that drive just kind of vanishes. Does that sound familiar to you?
Oh, definitely. And it's interesting how we often think that, big change needs some huge, massive effort right from the start.
We set these giant goals, picture these defining moments.
And when we don't get those instant dramatic results, it's easy to feel, discouraged.
Totally. But what if?
Yeah.
What if real progress isn't about those giant leaps?
Yeah.
What if it's smaller? Like way smaller, but consistent.
That's really the heart of this atomic habits idea, isn't it?
It is. We've been looking through excerpts in the book Atomic Habits and a really useful FAQ that digs into it.
Mm-hmm.
And our mission today, for you listening, is to pull out the actionable stuff from these sources. We want to figure out how these tiny, almost invisible habits can lead to, frankly, remarkable results.
And crucially, how you can actually put these ideas to work in your own life, maybe starting today.
It really shifts the focus, doesn't it? Away from these overwhelming goals.
And onto the building blocks, the daily stuff, understanding the mechanics behind our behavior and how we can maybe nudge them gently.
So here's the question I want you to maybe hold in your mind as we talk.
Yeah.
Why is it that some changes you try just seem to stick, like they become second nature, while others feel like you're constantly fighting uphill?
That's a great question. Is it just about gritting your teeth? Pure willpower?
Or is there something else going on,
Yeah.
something deeper?
Well, these sources we looked at, they really hammer home the power of these small, tiny habits.
It almost feels counterintuitive. We're sort of trained to look for the big bang, the breakthrough moment.
Right. But the core idea is that getting just, say, 1% better each day, it doesn't feel like much at the time.
No, you barely notice it.
But over a year, those tiny gains compound. The book has this amazing calculation.
Oh yeah, the 37 times better thing.
Exactly. If you improve by 1% daily for a year, you end up 37 times better. It really highlights how small, consistent effort pays off massively long term.
It's the compounding. Like interest, but for your life.
Precisely. And we should probably mention it works both ways. Small negative habits compound too, leading to problems down the line.
That's a sobering thought. And it's so easy to get caught up valuing that one defining moment, isn't it? That one killer workout or that huge project you pulled off.
Well, but totally dismissing the impact of just showing up and doing the small things day after day.
We're always waiting for the earthquake, but progress is often more like tectonic plates shifting slowly.
It's about where we put our focus. Are we looking for the fireworks or noticing the steady flame?
I love the airplane analogy they use. It makes it so clear.
The LA to New York one.
Yeah. Plane takes off from LA heading for New York. The pilot adjusts the course just 3.5 degrees south. Tiny change.
Barely noticeable leaving LA, the nose just moves a few feet.
But stretch that tiny angle across the whole U.S.
And you don't land in New York. You end up in Washington, D.C., hundreds of miles off.
It perfectly shows how these seemingly tiny choices, these small habits, repeated over time,
can lead you to a completely different destination in life. It makes that abstract idea of compounding feel really real.
Exactly. It just nails the point that success usually isn't some overnight transformation.
It's the product of your daily habits, those small, consistent choices.
We want the quick fix, the magic pill.
But building anything worthwhile takes that commitment to the small stuff, day in, day out.
Okay, so we get it. Small habits are powerful. But the big question is, how do we actually make them stick?
Right. Knowing isn't the same as doing.
And this is where the sources bring in a really key distinction. Goals versus systems.
Yes, the Scott Adams idea originally, right, from the Dilbert creator.
That's the one. We all have goals: lose 10 pounds, write a novel, learn Spanish. Those are the outcomes we want.
But the systems, those are the processes, the routines that actually get you there.
So we know why small habits matter. But how do we actually build them? That leads us to this systems idea.
And it's crucial because goals give you direction, sure, but it's the systems that actually drive your progress.
Focusing only on the goal can create that weird effect. You hit the goal, and then what?
Exactly. The motivation disappears. Maybe old habits creep back in. It's that classic yo-yo effect.
Right. And that's why just having a goal, however inspiring, often isn't enough. The book puts it so well. You don't rise to the level of your goals.
You fall to the level of your systems.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a powerful line.
It really is. Think about it. You want to eat healthier, great goal. But if your system is a kitchen stocked with junk and no plan for meals,
Your system is probably going to win out over your goal in the long run.
so it really flips the script. Focus on building good systems, good processes.
The daily routines, the environment, the feedback loops, that's what creates sustainable change, not just wishful thinking about the outcome.
Okay, now this next idea, this one really hit home for me. The concept that real lasting behavior change isn't just about what you do.
It's about who you believe you are, identity change.
Yeah. You might start a habit for a specific reason, a goal, but it only truly sticks, becomes automatic when it gets woven into your identity.
It taps into how powerful our self-image is. Our habits feel right, feel natural when they match how we see ourselves.
And the book points out, the more pride you take in some part of your identity, the more you'll naturally maintain the habits linked to it.
Like the examples they gave if you're proud of your hair.
You'll have habits to care for it, proud of your muscles.
You won't skip workouts. See yourself as a knitter.
You'll find time to knit. It makes perfect sense.
Your identity becomes this internal anchor for your behavior. You act in ways that reinforce who you believe you are.
And here's the kicker, the really powerful part. Every single action you take is like casting a vote.
A vote for the type of person you want to become.
Exactly. One workout might not transform you, but it's a vote saying, I'm someone who exercises. One page read is a vote for, I'm a reader.
And those votes add up. They build evidence. Over time, enough votes can actually shift your self-narrative, change your identity.
It's profound, really. It's not just doing habits, it's becoming through habits.
A very different way to frame behavior change.
Okay, so we're building a picture here. Small habits, systems, identity. Now let's get into the mechanics. How do habits actually work in our brains?
Right, the nuts and bolts. The sources lay out this fundamental four-step pattern. It underlies basically every habit we have.
Cue, craving, response, reward.
That's the loop. It's constantly running, often totally unconsciously.
So first up, the cue, the trigger. It tells your brain, hey, initiate this behavior. There might be a reward coming.
Think back to our ancestors' cues for food, water, danger. They were critical for survival.
Nowadays, the cues might be different phone notifications, seeing the coffee machine, walking to a certain room.
Yeah. But they still predict some kind of reward. Money, approval, comfort, information.
Our brains are just prediction machines, constantly scanning for these cues.
Then comes the craving. This is the motivation, the desire.
Not necessarily for the habit itself, right?
Yeah.
But for the change it promises.
Exactly. You don't crave smoking a cigarette, you crave the feeling of relief it provides. You don't crave turning on the TV, you crave the entertainment or distraction.
It's the engine driving the loop. Without the craving, there's no reason to act.
Then number 3, the response. This is the actual habit you perform.
Could be an action, picking up your phone, making coffee, or even just a thought.
It's the behavior itself, triggered by the cue and fueled by the craving.
And finally, the reward. This satisfies the craving. It closes the loop.
And crucially, it teaches your brain, hey, that sequence cue, craving, response worked out, remember it for next time.
Pleasure, relief, satisfaction. Even disappointment acts as feedback. Did this work? Was it worth it?
The reward reinforces the whole pattern, making it more likely to repeat.
And the key takeaway here, which the sources stress, is that all 4 stages need to be solid for a habit to form.
Right. No cue, the habit never starts.
Weak craving, no motivation.
Response, too diffusal. You won't do it.
Reward, unsatisfying. No reason to repeat it. The whole chain breaks down.
Understanding this loop is fundamental because it gives us levers to pull when we want to build good habits or break bad ones.
Okay, so we've got the loop. Now, how do we use it? This brings us to the 4 laws of behavior change from the book. Each law targets one step of that loop.
Let's start with the first law, which tackles the cue.
Make it obvious.
Exactly. If you want to build a good habit, make the cue for it as obvious as possible. Increase your awareness.
And one simple strategy for this is the habit scorecard.
Right. Just listing out your current daily habits. What do you actually do each day?
Wake up, check phone, brush teeth, make coffee. Just write it down. No judgment at first.
The FAQ suggests maybe marking them as good plus bad or neutral, just seeing them laid out.
That makes the invisible visible. You start to notice the patterns you weren't even conscious of. Maybe you, listening right now, could try jotting down your first few actions after waking up. It could be really revealing.
It's like that quote, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This scorecard helps bring things into consciousness.
Another really practical tool. Implementation intentions.
Ah, the when, where, and how plan.
Yeah. Instead of a vague goal like, I'll exercise more, you get specific. I will behavior. Do 20 push-ups at time. 7:00 a.m. in location. My living room.
That specificity removes the ambiguity. It gives your brain a clear plan and trigger, much harder to wiggle out of.
Then there's habit stacking. This is clever.
Tying a new habit to one you already do.
The formula is, after a current habit, I will new habit.
So, after I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 1 minute. Or, after I take off my work shoes, I will change into my workout clothes.
It anchors the new habit to an existing routine, using the old habit as the cue for the new one. Very efficient.
And maybe the biggest piece of make it obvious is environment design.
Oh, huge. The sources really emphasize how much our environment shapes us, often without us noticing. And visual cues are apparently the most powerful.
Because we rely so much on sight. So if you want to practice guitar more, don't leave it in the case in the closet.
Put it on a stand in the living room. Want to eat more fruit? Put a fruit bowl on the counter, not hidden in the fridge drawer.
Make the cues for your desired habits visible and easy to see. And conversely, make cues for bad habits invisible.
Right. If you want to watch less TV, maybe hide the remote. If you snap too much, don't leave cookies on the counter.
It seems simple, but these small environmental tweaks can have a massive impact because they influence that initial cue stage.
The book talks about that point-and-call system from Japanese railways.
Where workers physically point and verbally announce signals to increase awareness. The habits scorecard is like a personal version of that.
And it connects to Kurt Lewin's equation. Behavior is a function of the person in their environment. BF
Context matters a lot. We aren't islands. Our surroundings constantly nudge us.
Which also means changing your environment can be a powerful strategy for changing habits.
Definitely. Starting fresh in a new place often disrupts old patterns. Even just rearranging a room or dedicating a space for one specific use, like this chair is only for reading, can help break old associations. That one space, one use idea.
And this leads to a really important counter-narrative about self-control.
Yeah, the idea that people with good habits just have more willpower isn't quite right, is it?
Apparently not. The research suggests disciplined people aren't necessarily stronger-willed. They're just better at structuring their lives to avoid needing willpower.
They design their environment so they aren't constantly battling temptation. They make the good choice, the easy, obvious choice. Less time spent in tempting situations means less willpower needed.
It's about being the architect of your environment, not just relying on heroic self-control.
A much more sustainable approach.
Okay, law 1, make it obvious. Got it. Now, law 2.
Make it attractive. This targets the craving stage.
The more appealing a habit seems, the more motivated we'll be to do it.
And this is where dopamine comes in, that neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and reward.
Habits create this dopamine-driven feedback loop. When dopamine goes up, so does our motivation.
And interestingly, it's often the anticipation of the reward that drives us even more than the reward itself.
Like Pavlov's dogs salivating at the bell before the food even arrived, the anticipation is powerful.
So how do we harness this? One technique is temptation bundling.
I like this one. You pair something you want to do with something you need to do.
Exactly. The formula is kind of like, after I do habit I need, I will do habit I want. Or maybe even during.
So only listen to my favorite podcast while I'm exercising. Or after I clear my emails, I get to check social media.
You use the allure of the want activity to pull you through the need activity, making the whole package more attractive.
Very clever. What else makes habits attractive?
Social influence is huge. Joining a culture where your desired behavior is the norm.
All right, we're fundamentally social creatures. We want to fit in, be accepted, gain status. It's wired into us for survival. That quote, the lone wolf dies.
But the pack survives. Yeah. We unconsciously imitate the habits of 3 groups in particular.
The close, family, friends, the many, the tribe, the crowd, and the powerful, those with status we admire.
So if you want to make exercise more attractive, maybe join a running group or find friends who are already active. Immerse yourself in that culture.
The Polgar sisters' chess example is amazing here.
Oh, yeah. The father deliberately created this intense chess culture at home, books everywhere, constant tournaments.
For them, being obsessed with chess was completely normal, expected, even celebrated within their tribe. That made it incredibly attractive.
It shows how powerful norms are. If the behavior you want is standard practice in your group, it feels much more appealing and achievable.
And the third strategy for making habits attractive.
Reframing your mindset. Changing how you think about the habit.
Focusing on the benefits, not the drawbacks.
Exactly. Like the example of quitting smoking. Instead of thinking I'm giving up cigarettes, reframe it as I'm gaining health, energy, freedom, money.
Highlight the positive. Associate the habit with good feelings and outcomes.
Because often our current habits are just solutions, maybe not great ones, to underlying needs or problems. If we can reframe a good habit as a better, more attractive solution to that same need, the craving for it increases.
Now, making it attractive is about dopamine, temptation bundling, leveraging social norms, and reframing.
Oh, God.
On to Law 3.
Make it easy. This targets the response stage.
This taps into our fundamental laziness, basically, the law of least effort.
Pretty much. We naturally gravitate towards the option that requires the least work. So the easier a good habit is to do, the more likely we are to actually do it.
The book used that garden hose analogy, right?
Yeah, trying to force motivation for a difficult habit is like trying to force water through a kinked hose. It takes a lot of pressure.
Better to unkink the hose, make the habit easy, reduce the friction.
Exactly. Friction is the enemy of action. So how do we reduce it for good habits?
Environment design comes up again. Preparing things in advance.
Laying out workout clothes the night before, chopping veggies for salads on Sunday, putting your book on your pillow.
Small things that remove steps and make starting easier. Like that Japanese lean production idea, constantly removing waste and inefficiency.
We see this everywhere in successful products and services too. They succeed by removing friction.
Meal delivery takes away the friction of shopping and cooking. Dating apps reduce the friction of meeting people. Ride-sharing removes the friction of driving or parking.
They make the desired outcome much, much easier to achieve. Automation is another way. Things like setting up automatic savings transfers makes the good habit happen without effort.
And the flip side works too. Increase friction for bad habits.
Make them harder to do.
Take the batteries out of the remote if you watch too much TV. Delete social media apps from your phone, forcing you to log in via browser.
Put unhealthy snacks on a high shelf, or don't buy them at all. Even small barriers can be surprisingly effective.
And a really key strategy for make it easy is the 2-minute rule.
Yes. Scale down any new habit until it takes 2 minutes or less to do.
So read before bed becomes read 1 page. Do 30 minutes of yoga becomes take out my yoga mat. Run 3 miles becomes put on my running shoes.
The goal here isn't mastery at first. It's just mastering the art of showing up, making the start of the habit incredibly easy.
You establish the routine first, then you can gradually build on it once showing up is automatic. Standardize before you optimize.
Exactly. Nail the first 2 minutes. That's often the hardest part.
Okay, obvious, attractive, easy. That brings us to the final law. Law 4.
Make it satisfying. This targets the reward stage.
You're more likely to repeat behaviors that feel good, that are rewarding.
But here's the tricky part. Our brains are wired for immediate gratification. We tend to value rewards now much more than rewards later.
Which explains why bad habits are often so sticky. The reward, a sugary snack, nicotine hit, social media scroll, is instant.
While the negative consequences are usually delayed, and for good habits, it's often the opposite the effort is now, the real benefits, health, skill, knowledge, come later.
So the 4th law is about bridging that gap. We need to find ways to bring immediate satisfaction to good habits.
And maybe immediate consequences to bad ones.
How do we add immediate satisfaction? Give yourself a small reward right after completing a good habit.
But the key, the sources say, is that the reward should ideally reinforce the identity you're trying to build.
Right. So if you're saving for that trip, transferring the money you didn't spend on takeout into your Europe trip fund gives an immediate satisfying feeling aligned with your goal.
Or maybe after a tough workout, you take a relaxing bath or enjoy a healthy smoothie you love. It connects the effort with immediate pleasure.
And for bad habits, how do we make them immediately unsatisfying?
Accountability partners and habit contracts can work well here.
That's where you make a commitment, maybe even with penalties, to someone else.
Like that Brian Harris example, he apparently had to pay his coach, his wife, and wear his rival team's gear if he missed certain goals. That's immediate pain.
Makes the cost of skipping a habit very real. Right?
Yeah, exactly. It raises the stakes in the present moment.
Another powerful way to make habits satisfying is simply tracking your progress.
Visual proof of your success is inherently rewarding.
Like the paperclip strategy, moving a paperclip from one jar to another each time you complete a task. Or just using a habit tracker app or a simple calendar.
Seeing the chain grow, marking off those days, it feels good. It creates momentum. That don't break the chain method, often linked to Jerry Seinfeld.
It provides immediate visual feedback that you're making progress, which is satisfying in itself.
And fundamentally, the sources emphasize for a habit to stick long term, it needs to be enjoyable on some level. Find ways to inject satisfaction.
Makes sense. If it feels like a total slog forever, you're unlikely to keep it up.
So those are the 4 laws. Obvious, attractive, easy, satisfying. They provide a really solid framework.
Definitely. And just briefly, the sources also touch on a few more advanced ideas, sort of next level stuff.
Yeah, things like aligning your habits with your natural talents, playing a game you're actually good at or can get good at.
Like Scott Adams combining his drawing, business sense, and humor for Dilbert, a unique intersection of skills.
Also, the importance of staying in the Goldilocks zone habits need to remain challenging enough to be interesting, but not so hard they're discouraging. Continuous small improvements keep you engaged.
And I found that bit about elite performers really interesting.
Handling the boredom.
Yeah, that at the highest levels, it's often not about motivation, but about discipline. About sticking to the schedule even when you don't feel like it. Professionals show up, amateurs let life get in the way.
Mastery requires pushing through the inevitable plateaus and the mundane repetition.
Food for thought there. Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. Quick recap.
We talked about the incredible power of small atomic habits compounding over time.
The importance of focusing on your systems, the processes, not just the outcome goals.
How true change as identity change your habits shape who you believe you are.
And then the 4 laws for building better habits derive from that cue, craving, response, reward loop.
Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying.
It's a powerful toolkit. And it's crucial to remember this isn't about reaching some finish line called perfect habits.
No, it's a continuous process, always looking for that next 1% improvement, refining your systems.
Growth is a journey, not a destination. These principles are like a compass for that journey.
Well put.
So let's leave you with a final thought to mull over. The sources touch on this idea about happiness, that maybe it's found in that space between getting what you desire and forming a new desire.
And that happiness isn't something you chase directly. It sort of ensues from action. Desire leads you, but pleasure comes from the doing.
Interesting, right? So how can you design your systems, your daily habits, using these laws we talked about, not just to achieve goals, but to create more of that satisfaction, that pleasure in the process of living?
How can you make the journey itself more rewarding, bridging that gap between wanting something and enjoying the actions that get you there?
Definitely something to think about. We really encourage you to dig deeper into these ideas if they resonate.
Maybe pick just one small area you want to improve. Apply 1 or 2 of these laws. See what happens.
Start small, focus on the system, make it obvious, attractive, easy, satisfying. Remember the power of those tiny atomic habits.
Because knowing this stuff is one thing, but understanding comes from applying it. Give it a try.